Okay, welcome to the show. So the big question is that if George Russell was gapping Leclerc and Ferrari by almost a second per lap in qualifying, he beat them by a whole second. Why was the race so close? Because we all believed with that type of level of performance that Mercedes had in qualifying that they would destroy Ferrari in the race. We saw at the beginning of the race, both Ferrari cars leaped forward. Hamilton leaped to, I think he was coming third, and Leclerc was leading Russell. And for the first 8 laps, Russell was struggling, trading places with Leclerc and everything before he finally got the lead and was able to win the race. So we want to know where's the big discrepancy in the qualifying and the start of the race. Now, what I'm going to argue, and I'll find out what you guys think, is that number one, qualifying is a pure expression of raw power. And in qualifying, Mercedes was showing the fact that it can deploy massive amounts of energy and drop them. When you drop that, the drag and everything, it gives you a super boost. So the 1 lap pace of Mercedes, if you equate that to a whole race, it looks like it's a lot, but it's an extreme thing where you put all of your power. It's sort of like if a boxer, you put all of your power in one punch, but in a race, you have to measure your punches. So no matter what, during the race, Mercedes won't have as big an advantage as it had during qualifying, because qualifying is only 1 lap where you can exhaust yourself and you don't have to worry about doing 50 laps. So their advantage over Ferrari and the rest of the field will be less over a long race because they can't put all of their power. It's like someone who could win 100 meters. If you run 100 meters all out and you beat somebody by 8 seconds, if you try to do that for 2 kilometers, you can't do it. You can't maintain it. But also, I'm going to argue that not only the big advantage, Ferrari has a good turbo engine, and they've been doing well in starts, even in Bahrain. So the fact that Ferrari out-jumped them at the beginning of the race is not a surprise because their turbo is lighter than other people's turbo, and they have a great start. But great starts is not a race, and it's also not qualifying. So Ferrari's main advantage is at the start, and they're going to be dominating the starts all year. And the second thing I'm going to argue, and I'll find out what you guys have to say, is that we know that Ferrari lost by 15 seconds, but if they had pit stopped during the safety car, they would have gained 10 seconds. They wouldn't have lost 10 seconds, so they should have only been 5 seconds behind. But I'm going to argue that when they didn't do that pit stop and Mercedes was now 15, 20 seconds behind, Mercedes sandbagged for the rest of the race to save their engine, because you can't lose engines are very valuable now because of a lot of cars are stopping and the battery's dying, so they were saving engines. So I'm going to argue that Mercedes could have won by 30 seconds rather than 15 seconds, but they didn't do that because after Ferrari made the mistake with the pit stop, Mercedes stopped during the pit stop and gained a 10-second advantage. So they were just coasting after that, and they weren't putting their whole engine. So in reality, the race wasn't as close as it seemed. But nevertheless, they will have a bigger gap in qualifying relative than in the race, because qualifying is one big explosion, but in a race, you have to measure out yourself. What are your thoughts, Afolabi?
You're absolutely right. I mean, over a single qualifying lap, the Mercedes car is deploying all its 350 kilowatts of MGUK allowance, along with the hyper-aggressive ICE. So effectively, what you're doing is to empty everything on 3.2 miles, basically. But Ferrari appears to have a slight, aerodynamic wall where the active aero transition to X mode, that's low drag on the straights, costs them raw power. So that affects
in 1 lap, yeah.
Yes, in 1 lap. Now, however, under race conditions, nobody can run the Saturday map in under race conditions. We are entirely governed by the recovery cycle of the hybrid system, especially now that they've thrown out motor generator unit H to harvest exhaust energy. So that is off. And the thermal sealing of the sustainable fuels too, you have to consider that. So you can run that kind of, setup on Sunday. So Ferrari's race pace improved relatively because of the physical limits of a 58 lap race, basically. But Mercedes, this forced Mercedes to operate close. And like you rightly mentioned, they had to take it down. They turned down the week as soon as they saw that Ferrari made those costly strategic errors, because it wasn't necessary anymore. They were going to win anyway. So basically, that's the way it is. And going forward, teams will have to manage Saturday as well as Sunday. It's almost 2 different scenarios. And it's bitterly obvious now how the cars behave differently on Saturday and differently on Sunday because of the fact that the motor generator unit heat is not available anymore, to harvest exhaust energy. So this has to be carefully thought out by each team.
Yeah, and before I go to Johnny, and also let's not be deceived. At the beginning of the race, we already know that even during Bahrain testing, we know that Ferrari has a massive advantage in starts. And this is the problem that the FIA caused because these cars with the battery and everything, they're unstable. But Ferrari has a lighter turbo, which if you have a lighter turbo, it's sort of like a motorcycle. A motorcycle can accelerate better than a car because it's lighter. So when you have a lighter turbo, everything, it gives you a good start. And that's a big advantage they'll have in races. But we have to realize that when during the first start of the race, when Leclerc passed Russell and they were going back and forth, that was just for appearances. They were all pressing their boost buttons. It was sort of like a show. They were pressing their boost buttons and everything. But when strategy and real racing came into play, Mercedes shone because what was happening was Leclerc was pressing his boost button and he was using up all of his energies to pass Russell. Then Russell will pass him. And also when you have the deployment, we know that now there's super clicking where you come into certain corners and do things. So those back and forth was actually the software and the boost button. It wasn't real racing. In real racing, you pass by waiting to brake later and lunging in front of cars. That's real racing. That wasn't real racing yesterday. What do you think, Johnny? What do you think about? I know the first 8 laps of the race looked, or the first couple of laps looked fun, back and forth, and it was exciing.
It looked like gaming. It looked like gaming.
What was your thought? How did you feel about the race, Mr. Johnny? Yeah.
Actually, I was just to the point of when about Mercedes having in qualifying, it's like they know how to act like a sprinter, and then also know how to act like a marathon runner. They know how to, so they really got that hook.
Balance,
different mode. Yeah,
and what I also noticed that tire degradation. They didn't suffer too much tire degradation from they've all kind of figured out how to keep their tires because they really went really long on those hard tires.
Hard tires, yeah. So they had good tire strategy and had longer. Yeah, I did notice that. So to me, they were basically pacing themselves in the race. That's why it might have looked closer than it was. What do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, they've really solved. They know what to do. As in, they could have gone faster, they could have gone slower. They really controlled the race. But I had some rumors that they're going to be investigated because the car was just too perfect. I mean, look at Antonelli. He had a bad start, and even he was all the way back at 7th, and then he found his way with ease. So I had some might be some investigation about
and after the race, George Russell was laughing. I love this car's engine.
He was happy.
That they're just playing with everybody. There's something going on. So what what do people suspect? Did you hear? We have to look up some details about that.
Yeah, it's about their because they're able to control that burst of energy. That's like what happened to what's his name, Piastri.
Piastri had that problem where he it had 100 kilohertz or something like that boost, and it caused it to crash. So they have something. So basically, you're saying that Mercedes has something which stabilizes the volatile nature of the car.
Yes.
And we're gonna find out.
And the FIA might be investigated, and there's something about. But they might not be able to ban it until I think after 6 or 7 races. So
the compression thing too, which is helping them compression out. Yeah, so that was good. So let's switch up and talk a little bit about Red Bull. People need to watch out for Red Bull because Verstappen started in P20 and came P6, and we also know that in qualifying, Hadjar was 0.6 of a second behind Russell, which is not much. And if Hadjar 0.6 of a second behind Russell, we know that if Verstappen had made it to Q3, he probably would have been 0.3 of a second faster than Hadjar. So he'd only be 0.3 of a second behind the Mercedes guys. He probably would have come P2 and beaten Leclerc. And his recovery there shows that what we suspected from the first Bahrain test, which is that the Red Bull car, based on those 160 laps that Verstappen did, is very, very good for marathon racing. Like you said, it may not be the best for starts or for one lap pace, but it's very, very good over a long race, especially modeled after the way that Verstappen has racecraft and is very good on his tires, and is also be able to use the forces on the track. Verstappen uses the force of his car leaning and the curves and everything to give kinetic energy to the car without having to even use the accelerator. He knows how to use everything around him for kinetic energy, sort of like a glider. So we know that that car is dangerous. And I dare say if Verstappen had made it to Q3 and hadn't had that lockout, he would have come P2 probably, and he would have been pushing George Russell. So we have to keep an eye out on him because he came from P20 all the way to P6. And
Yeah,
a lot
that's
of
a driver.
people will say that it's because of the chaos and everything. But no, that's a very scary number. What are your thoughts, Afolabi?
Yeah, I thought Max Verstappen was sensational. I mean, going from P20 to P6, really covered and masked just how this car was, in my own opinion, was flawed. Because were it not for Max Verstappen's brilliance and having the fastest lap too, I think was exceptional. Were it not be for Max Verstappen's brilliance, I mean, he wouldn't have done this well. There's something about this Red Bull car that I've not figured out yet. It appears that while in qualifying, the car looks lethal, but is very, very erratic when it comes to when it goes to maybe in curves. There's a way the balance of the X mode and the Z mode is not quite right, and it leads to a kind of oversteer, that can affect the balance of
Yeah, with the car sliding.
so it's gliding. So that affected his starting position on Sunday. But in terms of the pure performance, the problems and the issues in this car should not be masked by Max Verstappen's brilliance. They need
I'll argue with you that the car doesn't really have problems. Here's why I say so. Haja came P3 in qualifying, right? He came P3 in qualifying. And he was ahead of the Ferrari guys in qualifying. So that shows the car is doing well. Now, you're right about the fact that on corners, the car is unstable because it's pointy. But it did very well. And I don't think Verstappen is masking the problems. I think that car has his DNA, and I think it has a very good algorithm because otherwise I didn't see them making mistakes. And we know that Haja, at the beginning of the race, during the race, he had a battery failure. But before that, he was coming fourth, right, Mr. Johnny? He was coming fourth. So I would actually argue that the Red Bull car is actually better this year than it was last year. And we have to remember, like I said, Haja came third in qualifying. I think that no, he came third or fourth. So first was the two Mercedes guys came
Mercedes.
1 and 2, and Leclerc
And
came
Ferraris,
Leclerc came third, and then Haja came fourth. What are your thoughts, Mr. Johnny? Let me go double check that.
Yeah, Verstappen, man, that was a crazy race. If they're gonna make a movie, one of those that this race will be one of them. Him starting, falling out in qualifying, ungracefully, and then after, but then still coming sixth, man. That was master class driving. Even though,
remember when he won Brazil from back in the grid? He won Brazil in the rain. So this guy is just crazy. Verstappen is crazy,
and that's showing that the car. That's actually showing how good that car is actually.
Oh, that car is good. Yeah, it's because it's not just him; it's the car also. And I think the car is actually better in racing than it is. I mean, during the race pace than in qualifying. Because in qualifying, everything is magnified. In qualifying, you have to go all out. And I think that the Red Bull car, when it's in qualifying, when you're dealing with extreme performance, it's fast, but it's unstable. But during a race, you don't have to use all that power. Like you said, you don't have to sprint. Because when you're sprinting, that's where instability is more dangerous. But during a race, you can pace yourself. What are your thoughts, Mr. Johnny?
Yeah. I mean, all I could just say, I was just trying to imagine if he had qualified, man, I say he would have won that race. Actually,
I think he would have won.
Could have won, it would have just been like Verstappen, Russell, and then Antonelli. That's
the only reason Go ahead. What are you going to say, Johnny? I
Or
mean, Johnny. Then we'll go to Falabi. What are you going to say, Johnny? Yeah. Sorry, I
oh
cut in
yeah,
front of you.
or maybe Leclerc third and Antonelli fourth. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's what I think. I think that if he had qualified third, that maybe Russell would have won, but Russell would have had to. I think he was sandbagging against the Ferrari. He would have had to push himself to the limit. So in other words, if Verstappen had qualified in second or third, he would have forced Mercedes to show all of their pace because that's what they would have needed to beat him if they could beat him. I think this is going to be the same story as last year. It was Verstappen versus the McLarens. This year is going to be Verstappen versus the
Mercedes.
yeah. One last thing before I go to you, Falabi. Check this out. When Verstappen said that he doesn't like these cars and that he's tired of F1 because these cars is Formula E on steroids. Norris said, I don't know why he's complaining. He's a millionaire. He's getting paid to race. If he doesn't like it, he should quit. And then yesterday after Norris fucked up and had a fucked up race, he was like, these cars are rubbish. So now you know. What do you think about that, Falabi?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's hypocritical because, I mean, you've spoken about Max Verstappen in such light too, but it's going to look like that in a season of regulation change. And I don't see anything particularly fantastic for Norris, and in fact, Piastri had a race to forget, basically. So P5 is okay, but if they continue on this trajectory, you are bleeding points, basically.
They don't have the available power. They have the same engine as Mercedes, but their engine is not synced in. They're not getting power. They have stability, but no power.
I think it's a grip thing, mechanical grip. I want
to bring up. I want to bring up one more thing. When Lewis Hamilton was winning, Norris said, "Oh, he has a fast car. That's why he's winning." Then when Norris was losing to Verstappen in the fastest car, Lewis Hamilton reminded him, "I think that guy." So Norris is always putting his foot in his mouth. You know what I'm saying? What do you think, John? He's always putting his foot in his mouth. You know what he should do? Shut up and drive.
Yeah, I think even Norris had to be careful after what happened to Piastri. I think they had to tone down his engine too a bit. Because the same thing could have happened to him. So that's why he was kind of like behind.
Yeah, I think he has been beating him this year in qualifying and everything. Piastri would have beaten him yesterday. But yeah, they have to tone down that car and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, because...
Okay, so here's qualifying. So this goes back to what I'm saying. This is why I think Red Bull is fast. In qualifying, Ishak Hadjar came P3. He beat Leclerc, he beat Piastri, he beat Norris, he beat Hamilton. He came P3. You see what I'm saying, Afolabi? Mm-hmm. So that Red Bull car is fast. And Hadjar, I think when he crashed out, he was coming fourth. It's because the battery died. You got to say, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it was.
So what I'm saying is that the Red Bull car has improved. Yeah. And also Hadjar is doing well. He's the best teammate Verstappen has had so far. This is only the first. No, he's not the best. Checo was the best during those years, but in the last couple of years, he hasn't embarrassed himself yet. What do you think of Falabi?
Yeah, it looks very promising for me. Finishing P3 in qualifying is very good, especially in a new season where the regulations have changed. And I don't know what happened. I think it was his battery that went off. And
it wasn't his fault.
He had to retire, and he will be a formidable, opponent to the rest of the top four grid. But I still think they need to really work on that car. Looks very punchy in the quali, but when it comes to the race, what happened to Max Verstappen is something that I would wonder. For a driver of his quality, he would have gotten him by surprise. I mean the spinning off yesterday, because when it comes to driving manually, he's the best, in my own opinion. And most of what he did today was on manual overdrive mode. Getting the car to P6 was sensational, So that's why I'm saying, I'm not saying the car is bad. I'm just saying Max Verstappen actually.
Back to how he pushed it further. Yeah, so Hadjar was coming fifth. He was coming fifth when his engine failed. So for him to be coming fifth in a race, I'm going to assume that he would have come fifth, and then Verstappen came sixth. This is a lot better from what we're seeing from Red Bull, where Max will come top 3, and the other guy will come 10th or will come 19th. Yeah. So what are your last thoughts on that, Mr. Johnny, about, in general, how do you think this is a lot better from Red Bull this year? And thank God Max didn't go to Aston Martin for $500 million. What are your thoughts, Johnny?
Oh, well. I have quite a few things, but one thing I noticed is that after when Hadjar had that engine failure, just before then, the Red Bull, Ferrari and Mercedes were about to start fighting. Actually,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
they had been been going back and forth, and stuff was about to start happening. It was actually getting more and more interesting. But then
It messed up the rhythm. And then,
yes,
and then after that, we'll end on this. After that, because when you have a safety car, you're supposed to pit because that's a free pit stop, and it saves you 10 seconds. The Ferrari guy kept riding. Then after 2 laps, Lewis Hamilton said, "Wait a minute, why aren't we pitting?"
Well, yes, here's my argument
again. Here's my argument again. If that had been Sainz, as soon as it happened, he would have said, "I'm pitting." He wouldn't say, "Why aren't we pitting?" or "Wait." And so what I'm saying, I'm not blaming Hamilton, but or Leclerc, but they're not proactive. Or if it had been Verstappen, he would have said, "Let's pit immediately." So to me, but what would happen? Hamilton and Leclerc will say it's the strategist's fault, which is true. It is the fault. But here's the thing: when you're the driver, you also have to be the race engineer. You have to be the race engineer, and you have to tell the engineer, "Hey, engineer, you didn't say stop. Let's stop now." Hamilton waited and said, "Why aren't we stopping?" As soon as that happened, and that's what cost them 10 seconds, and they might have won the race. So some things never change. We'll end on that. The Ferrari car is better, but some things never change. It's always a shit show. What are your thoughts on that? Sorry. What are your thoughts on that? Actually, what do you think about that, Johnny, before Fabi takes us out? That once again, strategy fucks them up when they have a good car. Yeah.
It's always the same old thing, too much vino. I think they drink too much wine.
Also, Hamilton came fourth, just one place away from a podium. So that's good. Yeah. But the thing, that thing is like trying to get a virgin to sleep with you. Come on now, remove your part. And it's just like giving it to you. Not getting it. But I think he'll get a podium sometime this year. So we'll see about that. Last thoughts of Falabi.
Yeah, I think Ferrari did very, very well. I mean, the way they started, snatching the lead at turn 1, I think they threw it away, basically by ignoring 2 virtual safety pit windows. That was fatal. Yeah. I mean, you can't keep aging tires on the track against a superior electrically efficient Mercedes-Benz engine. This was a fatal tactical error. If they had done it better, you never know, they could have won the race. That's what I feel, basically.
All right. So you guys, Mr. Johnny and Mr. Falabi, thank you. This has been a good one. We're watching Formula One Fanatics, the most fanatical F1 show in the world. So, Johnny, we'll be back on Tuesday and Falabi for qualifying for China. The show continues. Okay.